Hi guys, Simon Giselian here. So yesterday I did a SWOT analysis on the Democratic Party after the midterms, just to give my little bit there. Today I'm going to do the same for the Republican Party. So again, just as a caveat, I'm not a Republican, very much like an independent, very much a free thinker, but I do recognize sort of elements of the conservative base as being both independent and Republican. So let's get into it then. So we're going to do the SWOT analysis, which, as we know before, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's get into the strengths that the Republican Party now have going into this next Congress. Well, first of all, they now have the House. So the House obviously is the purse of the United States. So nothing works unless it actually goes through the House in Congress. So they can put the reins on any type of spending. They can advocate for spending. So this basically pretty much stops Biden's agenda in its tracks. So everything that he wants to do has to go through the House, and with a majority of Republicans, unless he can actually pull out some form of bipartisanship, it's just not going to work. One of the other strengths that the Republicans have is very much the strength of the Supreme Court. So they have a 6-3 advantage of conservatives on the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court, it's not necessarily a form of government. A lot of people have been criticizing it to say, well, they're unelected, people in robes that basically say what's going to happen. Well, they don't actually make policy. All they do is just judge as to whether it fits the Constitution or not. So what we are going to see is that anything that is unconstitutional, so that's stuff around the border, that's stuff about spending, things like the university grants, all of that type of thing, the forgiveness, that it's just not going to work because it's unconstitutional. So you're going to have a lot of problems there. The big strength is, of course, that now they've got the Speaker of the House as well. The Speaker of the House is third in line. So if anything happens to the President and or the Vice President, the Speaker becomes the President. Now, this is going to be interesting, I think, because there are some strategies afoot to actually create some investigations and possibly even impeachment. So if that happens, then it could be a shoo-in for the Republicans to actually have McCarthy become president. I mean, I know it's an outside thing, but it might happen. What they do have as well as strength is name recognition for a lot of senators. You have Cruz, you have Rubio, some of the governors like DeSantis, so they have a lot of name recognition, which the Democrats actually don't have. So that is a big strength. One of the other major things as well is that they can now create committees, and they will chair those committees, just as the Democrats have done for the last couple of years. That means that they have the power of investigation, the power of subpoena. So they can now start to dig into all the things that they've said they were going to do. So investigating the Hunter Biden laptop issue, Biden's clear problems with both China and Ukraine in regards to taking money. That is going to come up for committee, almost no doubt, from the Oversight Committee. So we're also going to see probably a reversal of the January 6th committee. That's a major strength for them. Now, another big strength is that they have a loyal base within the MAGA Republicans as well. Now, this is a double-edged weapon. It actually puts a lot of energy. So whereas the Democrats have the progressive base, which is very, very vocal but quite small, the Republicans have the MAGA, which is exactly the same. It is small, but it's very, very vocal. And I think that can be both a strength and a weakness for the Republican Party, because as they've got more, progressively more and more extreme in some of their viewpoints, that could be a bit of a damp squib for independents. They could actually see that as a potential threat. One of the big strengths that the Republicans have is actually that Hunter Biden is going to be I think, a major liability for the president. And that, with his cognition, his age, now that he's essentially going to be potentially a lame duck president, that could be a real problem. And obviously, the Republicans now, one of the things that they do have is that they've started to strengthen their base within the moderates. We're already seeing this. They're already starting to look at the potential for sidelining Trump in favor of a more moderate leader in the Republicans, which could start a bipartisanship. So, Biden knows, and his administration knows, they're not going to get anything done unless they can actually get some Republicans on board. And therefore, you're going to start to see a lot of things probably go towards the center as opposed to any of the extremes. Let's look at the weaknesses then. I think Trump is actually a weakness for the Republican Party. I think he's shot his bolt now. He was a different president than has ever been seen before. He still has a very powerful, very vocal base. But I think that's a real a real problem now, because a lot of people are saying that we just can't handle another 4 years of the problems that Trump brings in with him because people don't like him. He had 2 impeachments. I mean, that's unheard of for a president. He brings with him all the bad press, is so much oversight on anything that he does, anything that he says. So I think that is a real weakness for the Republican Party. I think that he drowns out everything else that the Republicans are saying. So, my advice would be just sideline. I've actually got something else to say about that as well. Another weakness is the extreme viewpoints of some of the MAGA Republicans. They sound like progressives, just in a different form. And I think that is a real weakness for the moderates and the independents that are looking to actually come on board, in a more conservative manner. Another big weakness is election deniers. We saw this all the way through. It's like, give it up, guys. Forget 2020. There may have been bad stuff done, but that's elections. Everyone cheats at elections. That's just the way it is. What you got to do is actually game the system. So we know now that ballot harvesting and mail-in ballots can be manipulated. We know that. So basically, Republicans just got to get in and do the same. Simple, it all comes down to majorities, so at the end of the day, they got to do what it takes. And I know that Trump was saying, don't mail in ballots, you got to vote on polling day. That has been a weakness, and we saw that within how the red wave didn't work because of that. There's potential going to be infighting as the Republicans now start to look at choosing a new leader, because they will have to choose a new leader. So you're going to start to see the more vocal aspects of the MAGA crowd pushing against more moderate, traditional Republicans as we look at who's going to take on the leadership. Another weakness is the abortion issue. We've seen that. That is something that's just not going to go away. Now, I think it's a messaging problem as opposed to anything else. I mean, abortion hasn't gone away, it hasn't been stopped. It's just been placed back to the states where it should always have been, and that's a constitutional thing. It's not, I think everyone agrees, even Republicans agree, that some aspects of abortion need to be there as a safeguard, for women. But as for the, no abortions with no caveats, that I don't think sits well with the American public. So that's a real weakness. So they've got to get out the messaging and say, yeah, look, we support abortion. However, this is what we would need to do. It needs to be, within a term. There need to be caveats for, incest and rape and all this type of thing. Need to have those safeguards. I think if they can get the messaging right, then it's going to be a problem. It's not going to be a problem. If they don't, if they leave it as it is, that is going to sit still there until 2024, and it's going to be another election issue. Another weakness, I think, is Mitch McConnell. He is old school, he's the old guard, and needs to be replaced, and he's been inconsistent all the way through, inconsistent with the way that he's run the Senate. And I think that now it's time for him to move on and move someone else in. So So those are the strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to do a second video now outlining the opportunities and the threats as I see them. So that's all for me as it is. Bye bye now.